Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board. He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome into college football today. It's time for the post-game show here on SportsGrid TV, and I don't think you could particularly ask for a better Saturday slate. Some big games in the books, some big wins in the books, and more importantly, me and Dubs Anderson going to run through all of it because now that playoff picture is getting a little more clear. Now everything is coming into perspective. Now the big dogs have been tested, and, well, we get to kind of reveal where your money should lie in terms of looking at national championship and so on and so forth. So first and foremost, Dubs, what's going on? How's your Saturday treating you with all these big games going on?
I feel like I'm still playing catch up. I mean, the chaos in the Big 12 remains. Indiana, they got their first test, their first wake-up call. It's the penultimate week of the regular season. So a lot of big storylines. I know we're going to recap some of the big takeaways from what we have seen for Week 13, but no shortage in terms of what we've seen for the Heisman market there as well. Coach Prime wasn't too happy after the whistle, but Travis Hunter, the two-way superstar, fantastic once again. So excited. We've now got a real measuring stick on who's on the inside, who's on the outside, who could make a bit of a tilt. And 3 of the top 10 ranked teams coming into this week for the college football playoffs have tasted a loss today. So it is all up in the air right now, Kasey.
Yeah, you can kind of see where we're at in the season because the temperatures are running very high. There was a lot of emotion on the sidelines. There was multiple games where fans stormed the field. There was all of this maybe confusion, not confusion, with the Arizona State game versus BYU. With 1 second left on the clock, they allowed the play to remain and then figured it out after the fact. A lot of teams did actually start clinching some positions and kept some playoff dreams alive, and that probably brings us to the first game we got to go into. Typically, we start from the top of the day because we know that all the action comes in at noon, but we got to talk about Oklahoma versus Alabama because Oklahoma just kept some dreams alive when it comes to the postseason with a 24-3 victory over Alabama. Dubs, you and I have talked about this Bama team a number of times throughout our time together here on College Football Today, and then we started to see some really great play collectively come together for this team. The Heisman candidate looking very Heisman candidate-y, if you will, but this was a performance where Oklahoma's defense made it a miserable experience for Alabama, and it's not the best time to be dropping any sort of game. So what did you make of this victory for Oklahoma and this loss for Alabama?
This is a terrible loss that could not come at a worse time. For the Sooners, they'll salvage this one, take a bit of confidence away from it. 24-3, it was a low scorer, so the unders comes in. But for the Crimson Tide, they went off at 14.5-point favorites. Jalen Milroe, who I've been singing the praises of all season long, 3 interceptions, turned the ball over 3 times, and that was not good enough. They never got the offense going. They really struggled to get the run game. And for Milroe, he just couldn't get it downfield. So to say that the Oklahoma Sooners were fantastic, I thought they were pretty good, but it was more a case of Alabama did not show up ready to play in this one, and the defense was absolutely stout there for the Sooners, and it's a sign of the times, especially where we sit here in the regular season. If you've got a team who's not playing for a lot, well, if you're squaring off against Bama, they're still going to come and ready to play in this one. So not to say it was a trap game, but they certainly got caught napping in this one. Didn't come to play. Memorial Stadium over there in Norman, and the Sooners score a monster success to tail out their season.
Oh, absolutely. And all the energy surrounded around defense. I'm glad that you painted that picture, though, Dubs, because realistically, when you look at the stats, it's not that Oklahoma did too much better than what Alabama failed to do, per se. The big defensive plays was the massive edge here. One credit I do want to give is that there was this whole situation of Jackson Arnold. Was he ready to lead this team? And then he was the initial leader of this team. Then they pulled him. They put in the QB2. They put in the QB3. Then they go back to Arnold throughout the season. While he only picked up 68 through the air, he picked up 131 rushing yards as a quarterback in this matchup to make sure that this team solidified a W today over a team that's looking to go to a national championship potentially. So outside of all of that, what can you kind of make of, Jackson's performance and what that means at least to him? Because this is one of the games where all the fans did storm the field and a lot of emotions were kind of coming across the camera there at the closure.
Yeah, you want to see it for the big sophomore. I guess, they've sort of been moving the goalpost for him there at quarterback. But if it took the wheels to get it done, use the run game. And he certainly lent on that with the opportunities that he has had. You look at his last 5 starts, they're more than 15 carries, but struggled to really get it over 50 rushing yards, and today was just an absolute breakthrough. They were trying to send it downfield, and it opened up a couple of nice seams, a couple of lanes, and he didn't think twice. And, for a young quarterback like this, there's a bit more juice on the line going in to the offseason as well. You want to show your worth to this team and show what you have, sort of built up there through the regular season. So I thought it was a very impressive performance there from Jackson Arnold. And you look at their third down conversion, it was very efficient football. They didn't make a lot of mistakes. It was gritty. It was hard-nosed, and that's the style that you expect to see from the Sooners. Is it a little too late? Yeah, probably, but it's a show of what they really can achieve when they come ready to rock and roll against one of the better teams in the country.
Absolutely. Probably starting to get some high hopes for next year already, but as mentioned, they will get a chance to dance in the postseason. We just don't know what that'll look like quite yet. Now, kind of pivoting over to another big game of the day before we start looking at the playoff bracket. I've talked about it a little bit throughout the day here on SportsGrid TV. You got Ohio State that pulled off a statement win today. I would say 38-15 over Indiana, one of the most perfect teams in college football this season. And I mean, collectively, Ohio State pieced their game together so well. 200 plus yards from their quarterback. Defense comes up with strong plays. They limited Rourke to just 68 passing yards. Ground game got off there in the second half, 79 yards by Lawton. But outside of that, I mean, collectively, well done job by Ohio State, who we've also said we haven't seen them bring their best football, but over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, I'd say they started to produce their best. What did you make of the 38-15 victory for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I think it was, contrasting for the quarterbacks here. And for the Hoosiers, this was their real test, a bit of a referendum spot late in the season. They came into this one undefeated, but they were really going to get a fight coming to them. And look, it's sort of tough, the takeaways from this one, because we know the Buckeyes were going to go big, but it was a matter of if they wipe Indiana off the field, then the Hoosiers' record means not nothing, but it's got a lot more holes in it than what we expected coming into week 13. If they keep it close enough, we're sitting, okay, they didn't get the win, but they're absolutely the real deal. And for me, it's right in the balance there. I like to think that I'll stay positive, and for Indiana and the Hoosiers, they're not going to lose a lot of stock from this one. The two quarterbacks, Curtis Rourke, I mean, he was under so much pressure. He was sacked 5 times out there this afternoon, could only manage 68 passing yards. So that was not good enough for Indiana and trying to stay in this one. They got off to a flying start. They scored first, but after that, it was absolutely crickets. And for the Buckeyes, I mean, Will Howard, you look at the numbers that we've seen all season long, Kasey, and the metrics say he's a decent to strong. He's a pretty good quarterback, but he's a winner. He's got that intangible. He just figures out a way to get it done. And the Buckeyes, they needed this one. This could be the catapult going in to the next couple of weeks here. So a lot of momentum for them and for the Hoosiers. A nice little wake-up call, and they're absolutely not going to lose a lot of stock. I think they'll still stay right in the balance.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to explain Will Howard. I mean, I think we're starting to learn, especially with these young quarterbacks and anyone that wants a future in the NFL, is the simplicity to their game can probably pay off a lot more than trying to do all the things. All the things is flashy, is exciting, it's entertainment, but sometimes you just need a Will Howard at the helm to get the job done. And he's been a great leader for that team throughout this season. We're getting ready to come up against a break here, but I'm going to lay the foundation, Dubs, of what I was seeing this morning when it comes to the potential playoff bracket. As of now, they've got Alabama taking on Notre Dame. They've got BYU taking on Ohio State. 2 statement wins came out of those ones. Ole Miss versus Indiana, Georgia versus Penn State, and then to be determined on a number of them. So we're going to take a look at this bracket as well as the national championship odds, probably see where the best gauge comes in when we start heading into the postseason for college football. But more importantly, we got more scores to run through throughout the day, so don't go anywhere. Stick with Dubs and myself here on College Football Today. It's the post-game show on SportsGrid TV.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you. You picked your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into College Football Today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson and Dubs Anderson running through the Saturday slate, starting to help clarify or paint that playoff picture and bring you up to date on all of the national championship odds and probably some Heisman talk. We've talked about the Heisman candidacy quite a bit throughout the season, but now that we're getting a little bit closer to what the potential could be for the national championship, why not gauge those lines and odds a bit closer? So Dubs and I were just talking right before we came out of the break. Aggies hung in there. They came back, but they also let Auburn back into the mix. So this is knotted 31-31, looking at some overtime. I mean, I got to throw this to you, Dubs, because the Aggies are your college football team, and they were a little slow to the start, but fashionably late was a theme for a number of teams today for college football. What did you make of this so far as they try to seal their fate?
I can't deal with the emotional roller coaster of sports wagering anymore, Kasey. I mean, at halftime, I gave it up. I said, I'm turning this game off. The Aggies have lost it, and then suddenly they take control there in the third quarter. They score a couple of nice-looking tutties. Reed really starts to get this offense going. He's now up to 268 passing yards with the 2 scores, and then Auburn get a field goal late in this one. So it's been a bit of an arm wrestle going through the fourth, and we're now sitting there in overtime. I believe the Aggies have got first possession, but this is how Saturday has been. It has been an absolute wild ride. Lock yourself in. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, there's a curveball coming. So let's see if the Aggies can hold on to close it out for Week 13.
Plenty of curveballs and fingers crossed for your Aggies. Speaking of curveballs, you're dealing with some fan emotions at the moment, so I can share some of mine that potentially played a role in today. Probably also helped me stop betting over the past couple of weeks. You've got Penn State versus Minnesota. This spread came in at 11.5, which I thought was so disrespectful because sometimes Minnesota can be surprising, but that's me rooting for a team that I typically love, especially on the hockey side. And then they're coming off of a bye week. Like, there were just all these things where I was like, how did they get to an 11.5 spread for a Penn State team that sometimes a little spotty in the first half of their game, shows up even more in the second half, and my words came back to haunt me because while Minnesota looked like they could take this one, they let Penn State in at the end to win it 26-25. Talk about being a frustrated fan. Well, not on the Penn State side, but what did you make of this win for Penn State? A much-needed victory for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. The Golden Gophers gave them a giant test late in this one, but for the Nittany Lions really couldn't afford to drop one. It's been a fantastic season, and once in a while you've got to get it done in a close score without covering the number. But as long as they won this thing straight up, they keep a really good season moving in the right direction there. So 26-25 going off, 11.5-point favorites. Obviously didn't cover that number, and the total sitting at 45.5. So the overs comes in terms of the standout performers for Penn State. Really, Drew Aller, I feel like he's been pretty solid all season long. You look at the rating again of what he put up there this afternoon. It was pretty efficient play, no turnovers. The run game was solid, and Tyler Warren was the standout again there in the receiving ranks. 8 catches for 102 receiving yards. So that was the difference maker. It was a pretty exciting game early. I thought we may see, plenty of points, but it sort of just tied out late in this one. But full credit to Penn State. They found a way to get that W, survive, advance, and keep moving in the right direction there for good friend of the show, Dave Sharapan. So they've got Maryland next week to close things out, and taking a look at the Big Ten standings right in the thick of it. So especially after that loss for Indiana, Penn State did everything they needed to do within their conference this afternoon.
Yeah, I guess we can give Dave a shout out. I'm sure he appreciates it. I'm sure he's got the hat on and the shirt and the gear and just completely decked out. Yep. I mean, who has a better closet? Dave Sharapan is unmatchable when it comes to this. But pivoting perfectly, because you talked about the Big Ten, you talked about some of the competition in that sense, but we saw a big matchup, but more so in the Big 12 sense. BYU went from being the perfect team to getting their first L last weekend to now picking up their second unfortunate loss today versus Arizona State. The Sun Devils really feeling themselves at the moment. They pull this one off 28-23, but let's just say it was even more mind-blowing heading into halftime where the Sun Devils were in complete control, limiting BYU to just a field goal. You've got so many great numbers on the charts here and a clinch to the Big 12 title. So what did we make of the Sun Devils just continuing to parade ahead?
It was a real fishy line coming into this game, Kasey. The number was booked at 3.5 for the Sun Devils as favorites. And looking at the records, I'm like, I thought the Cougars might be a slightly better shot than this one. But Arizona showed up, ready to rock and roll, and they played some really strong football. And I guess the exciting thing for this game was after the fact they're late, but the goalposts looked like they were coming down the field. The fans storm, they go crazy, and then the ref says, hey, we've still got a second left on this clock, so you've now got to get off the field. It took about 15 minutes to get this game going again, and then the Cougars had a final Hail Mary. I tell you what, they were close to pulling that thing off. So it was not a great look. You know, we love seeing the fans and the spectators get out there on the field and rejoice and celebrate, but not when it actually affects a team trying to pull off a really big upset, big win, and their chances late. But for the Sun Devils, playing some really good football. You know, what we have seen last few weeks here, Arizona State, they are trending in the right direction. I thought Sam Levitt, he was pretty strong at QB, and Cam Scatterbo continues to run the rock like an absolute beast there. 28 carries, close to 150 rushing yards, and he runs 3 into the house. So I guess that was the player of the match for me there for the Sun Devils getting that score. Cam was fantastic, 28-23, and they had to fend off that Hail Mary late in very, very interesting circumstances.
Yeah, Scatterbo was probably the biggest key impact player of the evening. I think it was still evening time. 28 carries is massive, a massive workload for a guy. So kudos to Arizona State and their continued success. But like I said, we're going to continue to paint this playoff picture with you here on College Football Today on SportsGrid TV, because some of these teams that Dubs and I just talked about, well, they found a loss today, and they were sitting secured in the bracket as of this morning. So let's see what might potentially move around as we move through the rest of the evening. Don't go anywhere. Stick with Dubs and myself here on SportsGrid TV on the other side of this quick break.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dog?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Told me I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back at it with college football today here on SportsGrid TV, running through the Saturday slate. Emotionally high day for a number of reasons, because of losses, because of wins, and because of, calls that players weren't really sure about. So before we went to the break, Dubs and I were talking about the Sun Devils' victory today over BYU. I love that you mentioned the fact that the fans got a little too overzealous there, stormed the field early. That could have played to some mental madness versus BYU, but especially because that 1 second on the clock, you already saw that they were reviewing the play, so how fans already got down there and all the madness was wild to me, Dubs. But another game that played a mental magnitude, if you will, Colorado versus Kansas. Where Kansas came from this season, who the heck knows, because they're pissing off a lot of teams in college football and probably a lot of people's pockets when it comes to betting angles because they just stick around. 37-21 is their victory over Colorado today. A lot of tempers flaring on the sideline, but what do you make of this? A statement win for Kansas, a statement loss for Colorado.
Yeah, the Jayhawks jumping up and down. I believe this is their third upset of a ranked opponent, and they're one of the only teams with a record under 500 to achieve that feat. So they're boom or bust. They can roll the very best of them. For the Colorado Buffaloes, we know the names that are going to garner a lot of buzz and attention, and Travis Hunter was truly amazing, fantastic. His numbers got even shorter in the Heisman market after a big beatdown, after a massive loss. So 37-21, Kansas at home rolled the Buffaloes, and this is a real big letdown for Colorado. And we could get that sense from Coach Prime and the presser after this one, saying, intoxicated by their own success. They had their fate, their future all in, their grasp, and they really let themselves down with this performance. They just didn't look themselves late in this one. Shedeur Sanders was lucky to not get ejected from the game. You look at the stats, I believe it was right around 266 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but there was a time there where, he was copping some really nasty shots. They were cheap shots. There's no two ways about it, but he came up from behind and pushed one of the officials, which is not on for a young quarterback who's projected to be one of the first off the board at this, at the draft coming up. It's not a good look. So for the Buffaloes, there's always been that sign of immaturity both on and off the field, and it's a bad loss for them, but they looked a little bit like sore losers there. So for Coach Prime, left reeling there for Colorado on what has been a really good season from what we have seen thus far coming into Week 13.
Yeah, and wildly enough, I think that you just kind of played it out there perfectly. Emotions have kind of been the Achilles for this Colorado team. Not managing their emotions have cost them games. Not managing emotions have caused issues in both ways. And when you talk about the draft, per se, it's going to make this guy a little untouchable in a way. You already feel like he's in a bit of a coddling situation considering the coaching situation alongside of his play. Not to say that he's not great, but people don't want a kid who's not going to be able to manage expectations and emotions when he's going to be pulled out of his comfort zone and put into the big leagues. So a couple of things to take away from this matchup, but we'll see what goes down when it comes to Colorado. We're going to slightly start touching on this, but luckily on the other side of the break coming up here, we will have Rich Sermonello join us to give his insight and expertise to all of the excitement on this college football day. Another Titan falls today. It's the Ole Miss Rebels to the Florida Gators, 24-17. And I'm just going to let you give your opinion on this one because I've talked about the Florida Gators too much in the past 2 weeks, Dubs.
What is going on? I mean, Ole Miss, see you later, college football playoffs, 24-17 in the swamp. And I mean, this was, the same Florida that we saw topple last week going against LSU. They're absolutely taking them down. So for Billy Napier, this is what we've been expecting for a very long time. It's a sign that the program is moving in the right direction. Ole Miss, not good enough. Florida, they're starting to find their stride. And if this is a sign of things to come, watch out. There could be some massive years and massive winning seasons coming here for Florida in their near future. So this was probably, I'd say, one of the biggest upsets of Week 13 for Ole Miss. Not good enough, and that's absolutely going to drop their stock and maybe put it right out of that playoff equation.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways that Florida has just become so formidable, or where they've collectively brought their game to the strongest point, it's this defense. It's ridiculous. 4 sacks today on Jackson Dart. You've got 2 interceptions. They went down as well. And plus, You got a dual threat quarterback that can throw the ball and use his legs, and usually is leading the running back stats for the game. And they did very, very well at making sure that they kept him under pressure and completely flustered. But as promised, we get more insight on the other side of this quick break when Rich Seminello joins Dubs and myself here on College Football Today. So do not go anywhere. Continue to hang with us as we bring you more information through this Saturday slate and an updated score hopefully here soon as well. So we'll catch you guys back here on the other side.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into College Football Today here on SportsGrid TV. It's the post-game show with Kasey Hudson, Dubs Anderson, and now Rich Seminello to help break down all of the madness over the course of the day. Rich, I'm so glad that you joined us because Dubs and I probably have 1,000 questions apiece from all of the great games. You and I last week started talking about one of the playoff pictures that was putting into perspective from the numbers on the AP Top 25. That has changed around quite a bit, so I got to ask you the most simple question before Dubs tees up. Your favorite game of the day?
I'm gonna take what Dub said before the break and build off of that. It's Florida. I can't get over the job that Billy Napier has been doing in Gainesville. If you go back, guys, to week 2, week 3, I was one of the people building a list of potential replacement candidates for Billy Napier. Rough start. Blown up by Texas A&M, blowout loss to Miami. And that's the toughest situation for a coach, trying to keep young athletes focused when, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of distractions. The schedule was the toughest in the FBS, certainly on the back end. And Dubs mentioned it. LSU upset last week, Ole Miss upset this week. And it's a lot of young players. It's not just DJ Lagway. You guys referenced the defense. 2 sophomores were the stars. On the interior, Caleb Banks, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Kyle Thornton had those 2 big interceptions in the final 2 minutes of Jackson Dart. Both of those guys are sophomores. Lagway, obviously, a true freshman. So really a lot of momentum heading into next week's game against Florida State, thinking they win that rivalry game, should be 7-5. Bowl game, 15 extra practices, really blown away by Florida and what they could be building in the offseason.
So, Rich, if that was the biggest, I guess, shock for you this afternoon for Week 13, what was the most polished performance? Could I tease you with a little Tennessee, the Volunteers? They were pretty special out there, 56-0 over the Miners. And with some of the upset losses, this could open up a nice little pathway into the playoffs.
Fantastic point. It was something I wanted to talk about tonight, which is the two big winners, Tennessee and either Miami. I'm thinking it's Miami or SMU. I think the loser of the ACC title game now has a clear pathway to the playoffs. Ditto Tennessee with the losses by Alabama and Ole Miss. Now Tennessee looks like as long as they win next week against Vandy, they should be in the playoffs as well. So a lot of pieces beginning to fall into place. A couple of quickies in terms of polish. Obviously, I'm sure you guys talked about it in the first half hour. Ohio State looked great. Now was the time for Ohio State. Couldn't afford to lose after the loss against Oregon. They showed up in a big way offensively, but especially defensively against Indiana today. And how about Notre Dame? I think we keep forgetting about the Fighting Irish. I know the schedule hasn't been a gauntlet, but since that loss to Northern Illinois, they are just like a locomotive. Great ground game. Great defense. I know it was Army and they were overmatched, but they were also undefeated. And so Notre Dame heading into USC next week looks very impressive. Win that game against the Trojans, and they will surely be in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. And I think that they've done well with kind of having more of a balanced attack with their plan versus their opponents. I mean, Army could have been one of those teams to sneak in there and make things a little bit more problematic in equal measure to what we saw in week 2. So the progress has been promising. Talking about games where there may have been a clinch or where there may have been like pivotal moments, Dubs and I did touch on this, but I do want your perspective on what it means for the Sun Devils to best BYU today, 28-23. At first, we didn't see BYU in that first half, and then they made a big march in the second half. Madness when the game was starting to come to a close with 1 second left, but big plays all around from their quarterback to their running back room to their wide receiving room. I mean, the Sun Devils look like a very complete team today.
Yeah, I am officially a Scatterbro. Cam Scatterbo, one of my favorite players this year. I mean, this guy does absolutely everything for the offense. I've mentioned him in previous weeks. FCS transfer, off the radar, has become the heart and soul of that Arizona State offense. Buck 47 and 3 touchdowns today, first 3 touchdowns of the game to stake ASU to a 21-0 lead. And I suspected that I was going to love the Big 12 this year. They have not disappointed. And now we have just a mad dash to Arlington to see who's going to play in that Big 12 championship game. ASU wins against Arizona. They're in, but who's going to be number 2 now that BYU lost? You guys mentioned Colorado lost. Iowa State beats Utah. So all of those teams now have 2 conference losses. So it's going to be a wild finish in the Big 12 to see who faces what I think will be Arizona State. And again, I mentioned this before, Kenny Dillingham, youngest head coach in the FBS. Last year, his first season in Tempe, 3-9. This year, they can completely flip the script, potentially finish the season with 9-10 wins, and be a playoff team that gets a bye. So just a fascinating turnaround. This regular season has just been phenomenal in college football. Despite the 12-team playoff, guys, it has been as exciting as I've seen in many, many years.
And Rich, talking about the team coming into Week 13, holding that 12th spot, Boise State projected to go as a 4th seed if the college football playoffs were to start coming into Week 13. They get a nice little score out there today, 17-13 over Wyoming. But what is the measuring stick for Boise State? Are they the real deal? Is Ashton Jeanty the best running back in the nation? He puts up another massive stat sheet, another 169 rushing yards. But is this the time where we sit back and say, okay, they could be viable contenders in the playoffs, or is it still a matter of time and they're really not going to get that test once we get there?
Yeah, great questions. First off, with Ashton Jeanty, 2,000 yards, first back to do that since 2019. So he passed an important threshold, especially for those thinking about Heisman Trophy. It looks like Travis Hunter is a heavy favorite for good reason right now. Another couple of touchdown receptions today for the Buffaloes. All-around athlete, but Genty going over 2,000 yards is going to attract the attention of some voters. In terms of Boise State, are they fit to beat a team from the Big Ten or the SEC? I have my doubts. You know, if they're a number 4 seed and they get a bye, and in round 2, potentially facing the number 5 seed, you know, I think they'll be a heavy underdog. I think you'll have a team from a Power 4 conference spending 2 weeks to prepare for essentially one player. They're going to be creating a defense just to stop Ashton Genty. So can they win a playoff game? Perhaps, but I think it'll be a long shot. And despite the fact that they'll be the higher seed, Dubs, I think they'll be a heavy underdog, maybe a touchdown or higher in that round 1 game.
Great perspective. Just an update here when it comes to the Aggies versus Auburn. 41-41 is what we're seeing, and still probably some game left here. Now, kind of going back to the playoff picture, we'll be coming up against the break here shortly, but new numbers came out, new positionings came out. You have Alabama versus Notre Dame, BYU versus Ohio State, Ole Miss versus Indiana, Georgia versus Penn State. Which one of those matchups was potentially most impacted today, considering BYU lost, Alabama just lost, Ole Miss just lost, and then you got Penn State, who almost fell short to Minnesota?
I mean, I would say all of them, Kasey, with the exception of maybe Georgia, Penn State. I mean, all of those games now. BYU may not get there. I think Alabama and Ole Miss, barring a shocker, are out. I think they're not going to be one of the 12 teams. So, you know, Georgia, Penn State, both of those teams look likely. Penn State, to your point, survived against Minnesota by 1 point. I don't think the Nittany Lions look great today. So a lot of top 10 teams really struggled. And that's the beauty of college football once we get to November.
Absolutely. Well, once we get back from the other side of this quick break coming up here, we're going to see where this national championship odds and lines lie, and maybe if there's some underdogs you should be keeping a closer eye on as we get closer to the end of the regular collegiate season. I mean, you got Penn State sitting at that 4 spot, Notre Dame at that 6, Alabama at 7, Georgia at 8, Ole Miss at 9, and Tennessee at 10. So don't go anywhere. Plenty to break down on the other side of this quick break here on SportsGrid TV.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, you know, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas, you know?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into college football today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson, Dibs Anderson, not Debs, Dubs Anderson, and Rich Sermonello. I'm so sorry. Dibs, I can call you Dibs. No, I tried to give you nicknames earlier in the season, and they all fell flat. They were horrible. But what I can do is riddle off picture before these 10 teams and see, I don't know, where the most flattering angle comes in looking at the national championship odds. So just as a quick reminder, what I saw as of this morning for the potential playoff bracket before I ask both of you guys' opinion on this. Alabama potentially taking on Notre Dame. Alabama faces a loss today. BYU versus Ohio State. Big performance out of Ohio State. Big loss for BYU. Ole Miss versus Indiana. Both teams lost today, but one more impactful than the other. And then Georgia versus Penn State. Not the greatest play out of Penn State. And we're seeing a little cleanup out of Georgia, but still over the past 5 weeks, we haven't seen their best ball either. So, Rich, I'll throw it to you first. When it comes to looking or considering this bracket and then the national championship odds, you have Ohio State at the top, Georgia behind, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, Tennessee, Miami. Where do you kind of gear here that might look more flattering?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting chalkier by the week. I remember mentioning a couple of weeks ago that a mild, I wouldn't call it a long shot, but maybe longer odds at that time. I really liked Ole Miss, and that fell flat today. I put some money on Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago when they had the big win over Arkansas. We saw the revival of their offense in Jackson Dart. Trey Harris comes back today at wide receiver, had a big touchdown catch, but that offense fell flat against Florida, so Ole Miss is out. And, you know, in terms of odds that I don't really like Miami. I don't think Miami's a legitimate national championship contender at this point. Impressed by Oregon. Want to see if they could beat Ohio State. If in fact it's Oregon and Ohio State, as I suspect it'll be in the Big Ten title game. Can they beat the Buckeyes twice? Always have to pay attention to Georgia at this point. So, I see a lot of chalk right now.
Yeah, it's been a big shuffle in these previous couple of weeks. Now for an update between the tango that was Texas A&M versus Auburn. Auburn takes the win. Sorry, Dubs, 43-41. But the good news being it's over after all of that action pack. Now we got another game where fans are storming the field and more excitement to add to college football. Dubs, now pivoting the same question over to you, looking at the national championship odds, anything standing out to you in terms of the wins and the losses that have been accumulated over the previous couple of weeks, more importantly today?
Yeah, taking a look at the bracket, trying to see who's going to be squaring off and who's going against, I do think Ohio State could get a likely nice little run there through the quarterfinals if they were to take on Boise State, but then likely going to square off against Oregon in the semifinals. So taking a look at the odds market, trying to find a couple of different positions. Ohio State plus 260, don't mind that number. It's a little short, but then Oregon plus 390. Dylan Gabriel, they've been playing fantastic football. I know we don't get to see him here for week 13, but I think that'd be the play for me. If I had to split them, I really don't think there's such a discrepancy with what they're bringing out onto the field. So I'd take Oregon at a bit of a price there at plus 390. But in terms of some of the other powerhouses, Georgia looks strong. I guess one of the question marks for me, Rich, was what we saw from the Longhorns earlier today. Quinn Ewers had a little ankle concern coming into the second half. They really had to lean on that run game going through the third quarter. But for Steve Sarkisian in Texas, they found a way to get that win 31-14 in a low scorer. What do you grade them from that Week 13 performance? And are they one of the top 4 betting choices going into the playoffs?
I have my doubts right now. We talked with Pharrell this week about one of the things I brought up was the fact that I think Texas is overrated at 3. I'm not sure if there's anyone that really deserves that spot based on record and based on opponents, but look at the Texas schedule. Where are the impressive wins at this point, right? You beat Michigan. We thought in the preseason that would be a big game in Ann Arbor. Michigan is way down this year. You have the annual Red River rivalry in Dallas in early October. Oklahoma, despite the upset of Alabama tonight, having a rough year. So that's not an impressive win. The biggest game that Texas played was against Georgia. That was a home game, and they were terrible. I mean, they were not competitive, especially at the line of scrimmage against the Bulldogs. So I don't know what to expect from Texas at this point. Last week, unimpressive against Arkansas. Dubs, you mentioned it. Kentucky today, 31-14. Quinn Ewers was average. The young running back was good. Anthony Hill Jr., the linebacker, outstanding, led the team with 11 tackles. But right now, Texas does not look like an elite program. Good, kind of like Penn State good, but are they at the level of Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon? I have yet to see it. Now, maybe they turn it up in December once we get to the playoffs, but at this point, I feel like Texas is an overrated third-ranked team based on what they've done with this schedule.
You basically touched on it, Rich. I was going to touch back to it eventually, but you brought up Penn State in comparison. They're sitting at 16-1 odds when it comes to the national championship conversation, but maybe just kind of continue to emphasize what we're not seeing out of Penn State that would make them a true contender here, because you still have a number of fans that are holding on hope, thinking that they can continue to push through and the defense will pull out every stop along the way to get them even further. But what do you make of this Penn State team right now that they're not getting the job done?
Yeah, just an incomplete team. Again, I see them as an also-ran in the Big Ten. Here are a couple of reasons why. Struggled to run the ball against Minnesota today. Defense is very good, but, does Drew Aller, the quarterback, does he really strike fear into opposing defenses? The guy who scares me the most is Tyler Warren, their tight end. I think he's one of the 5 or 6 best players, offensively or defense, in the entire country. I think he's going to have a phenomenal, not good, but a phenomenal NFL career. Abdul Carter, he's an All-American off the edge, but I think they're a good team. I just don't think they're a great team. I think Penn State could be upset in the first round. I don't think they're a legit national championship contender right now.
It makes sense. I love the emphasis on the supporting cast around them and the intimidation factor. You don't really think of that when you start talking about the postseason, but it is crucial and important. And if it does play out that they go up against Georgia, well, Georgia kind of has that swagger to keep them in it. And Carson Beck's not tilting his chin at anyone quite yet. He's continuing to stare down his opponent regardless of his numbers. And we know Georgia's defense can come to life sometimes as well. So if that happens to be the case, we've got plenty to look forward to. Don't go anywhere. We got one more rally here on College Football Today, the post-game show on SportsGrid TV.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into college football today. It's the post-game show with Kasey Hudson, Dubs Anderson, and Rich Simonello, running through the Saturday slate, talking some national championship and trying to get a clearer picture of this playoff picture for you guys here as we get ready to close out the regular season for college football. We were talking about Penn State really not showing their teeth enough to be taken seriously, or intimidation factor, as Rich put it, which I absolutely love. But I do need to track back to something else, because Indiana was one of those teams that were just continuously showing perfection behind their game. You were seeing a lot of incredible play from each individual player collectively. But what do you make of them sitting at 50-1 odds for the national championship, and what that loss today might mean for them, or how it might impact them down the stretch?
Yeah, I won't say it's a death blow. Sorry if I stole that from you, Dubs. I'll hand it off to you in a sec. I'm not sure if that was for me, Kasey, but I think right now in terms of Indiana, I love what they've done this year. Love what Kurt Cignetti has done. I think they're going to be in the playoff, especially with the SEC teams falling, A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss. That opens the door as long as Indiana takes care of business next week against Purdue. But are they a threat to win games? Right now, I'm not sure. I was just not impressed the way they were able to handle the physicality of Ohio State. They got a little bit exposed. So take nothing away from Indiana, but I think they're capped at possibly a 10 or 11 seed that loses in the first round.
Well, it looks like it's that time of the show where we get Dubsy's betting card up, and we can all poke holes to it and have a real laugh at my expense. I thought I'd tell the production team, unless it's 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, I don't want to see this thing, but let's go through it anyway. All right, top of the board, Indiana grabbing the points. Ohio State win this one 38-15. We're just going over the big takeaways from that game. Notre Dame, nice little pick up there. 12.5 alt line. Absolutely smashed that one home. The Aggies, tough beat, 43-41. Auburn get the score over Texas A&M in overtime. It was a thriller. I was banking on Coach Prime and Travis Hunter, the two-way superstar, to get it done for the Buffaloes on the money line. Didn't work out in favor. So there it is. Oh, in Kentucky, Texas, sorry, we had that game total, 46.5, and we just sneak in with 45 as the game total. So 2 for 5, could have been 3 for 5, could have been 4 for 5, and I could have been anything coming out of high school. So that was my big takeaway from week 13. Rich, as we point eyes towards week 14, Thanksgiving, what are you most looking forward to for a new week in college football with the playoffs approaching?
Other than week 1, Dubs, it's my favorite weekend of college football, the entire regular season. I'll tell you why. We get Egg Bowl Thursday night, Thanksgiving night. Friday, we get sort of a sawed-off schedule of games. Saturday, we get a full slate, and it's rivalry week. So we have all kinds of fun old oaken buckets and pig-related trophies that will be handed off to the winning team. It's a great time for college football. We also get a chance, and unfortunately it loses a little bit of steam with the Aggies losing tonight, but Texas A&M, one of the most hated rivalries in all of college football. It's been dormant since A&M went to the SEC. Now that they're both members of the conference, with a lot on the line, by the way. Texas looks like they'll get into the SEC title game. The second team right now wide open. So Texas A&M Saturday night is going to be a wild affair.
Wow, well, on those lines, Rich, what's your favorite rival in rivalry week?
Oh my God, there are so many. I'll go with Oregon-Washington. That's a game I really enjoy. Usually this time of year we're talking about Oregon State, Civil War, but with Oregon State without a conference home, that game was played earlier this year. I'll go Oregon and Washington. It's underrated out in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of hatred. A lot of heat between those two. Oregon now the last remaining undefeated team in the country. How about that? Indiana goes down. Army goes down. Oregon stands alone, and the Huskies now have a chance to end that perfect season next weekend.
Wow. Do you have a favorite, Dubs, in the rivalry category?
Well, I think the one we just highlighted with the Longhorns taking on the Aggies, absolutely going to be fantastic. Down at College Station, Kyle Field, it's going to be a madhouse, north of 100,000. And Aggies, they'll be looking for a bit of a bounce back, and I think we should see plenty of points in a bit of a track meet. And favorite side, Again, it's stuffing with a bit of gravy. Thanks for asking.
You're so welcome. Well, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving week. If y'all know anything about me, you know it's Florida State. I've watched that rivalry since I was about 5 years old. So this week's going to get a bit chaotic outside of all the Thanksgiving traditions. I hope everybody enjoys their friends, their family, and has a great, safe week.
Right here.
It's a new era in CFP to start